I'm Michael Salza,
And I'm AJ Girdage.
and this is our 5-minute reflection video on ColorBrine. We wanted to make a game that was very fast-paced and that we could play with multiple people.
Where people could sit around almost like on a couch and just have fun with their friends side to side, controllers in hand. Kind of like the traditional idea of how you play Smash or the original Halo games.
And since we play Smash so much, we wanted the game to have a lot of movement options.
And a lot of like combat complexity. We wanted it to be, you could be either super aggressive or you could be hiding. But we wanted to leave the players with a lot of options.
Mm-hmm. And also like Smash, we wanted the control scheme to be very simple for people to play, right? You pick up ColorBrine and you can already really just guess the controls and just go have fun with your friends without really knowing all the little like details that you can learn, like wall jumping.
Yeah, minimal pickup was a big thing for us. We wanted the control scheme to be as simple as possible, but you could be as complex as you would like with it. So you can always grow from where you start.
So, for example, I could wall jump off a wall and then swing my sword and hit him in midair, whereas someone else can just, who doesn't really know how to play the game, just sort of walks around, starts just slashing on the ground and jumping.
Exactly. So we came up with the idea of ColorBrine because we thought we were thinking about how we typically played Smash and how we could change the style of the gameplay. And the first thing that came to mind was this light system where you could either hide in the shadows or you could be super aggressive and run out into the lights and just go right after them.
We were also watching a lot of Samurai Jack.
Yeah, that is true. There was also a lot of Samurai Jack. Speaking of which, there's more Samurai Jack coming.
Yes.
But that's against the point. We really wanted to make a game with ColorBrine that felt like the traditional Smash experience, but with its own twist. We wanted to make it so there's more strategy involved, where you have to plan your movements. We also wanted to give you more options to work with, because in Smash you're always looking at the other players. So what happens when you're not really certain what's happening? So there was a lot of elements that we wanted to add with ColorBrine to improve what we already thought was a fantastic experience with Smash.
And one of the first places we started was map making. We wanted to make the maps really, really simple to understand, but also give the player a lot of freedom to move around and wall jump and just have fun.
And part of the challenge of that was actually that we had to make the maps balanced, because it's very difficult whenever you're working with a light and shadow based system to make the maps balanced. So we did a lot of play testing to make sure that people were having fun and that the maps felt like they were the right contrast of black and white. In order to make the players feel like they were more in control of the situation, though, we really wanted to harness the essence of what it felt like to move around in a fun, fast-paced way where they constantly felt like they were in control, but it was very easy to pick up.
So we tested the speed a lot. We had a lot of people test it to tell us whether the game was too fast, too slow, whether or not like wall jumping was fun, double jumping was fine, and we found a really, really good balance that a lot of people seem to enjoy.
Exactly. And to do that, we just used a player controller with a state-based system, so we constantly can adjust how those states act to get the desired user experience that we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
With the dynamic light system, actually, we created an entirely unique light system for this game. There have been a couple like it, but as far as I know, no one's created exactly what we did here, where it is we used a lot of different techniques to really create our own 2D light, which works with all sorts of colliders. It's very easy to work from both a developer perspective, and it's very easy to understand from a player perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us a lot of influence over how the game can be played just by moving these around, and we can test it very, very quickly. So the light system was a really huge improvement to just drawing maps as the light we would want, and then trying to test it. It was just a lot better to make the dynamic light system instead.
Before, we had a camera that just stood still and would sort of look at the entire level and never move. And then we made the funky camera, as we called it,
Yes.
that would focus in on the action and move around with the players, but never really give away where your position is truly at. And it'll never go off screen or anything like that, but it's really good for just keeping that fast-paced action so you never feel like you're out of the zone.
Yeah, the funky camera really improved how the gameplay felt. Because it was still fun before we added it, but it really made it feel a lot more intense.
It felt bland before.
Bland, just straight up bland. We're going to talk about the item system?
Yeah, it's really easy to add items. We can add almost any item we want to. We just put in an item box, set what item it is, and player picks it up and throws it, and that's it.
And we can make the items all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be just a throwable object. It's basically we just have a use function, and we can make it do anything whenever we call that use function. One of the biggest things that we actually had to do for this game was actually the multiplayer input, because there's a lot of different ways to do that in a game, and sometimes it goes well, a lot of the times it doesn't, because there's a lot of different factors to consider. How many people are actually using all of the inputs, and how many players are on the map whenever you aren't using all of your inputs. So we had a total of 5 inputs, one keyboard, and 4 joysticks. So it was a challenge for us to build a system that was flexible within 5 players. So we made a system so that way each player can easily pick what input it is based on. And in the main menu, actually, we made it so that way it was easy to pick what team you were on. So it's very intuitive to just jump between teams and select your input. And you don't have to worry about who's using what. It's very, very, very easy to just jump into the game and start playing with everyone else.
Also, one thing that makes the game really fun is the hitboxes, how precise they are. Before, we just had like a standard square over the player, but now each frame of animation has its own separate hitbox, so that when I'm ducking, I won't be hit from above, or when I'm jumping, you can't like hit underneath my legs and kill me. That's all within the animation, or the frame. Sorry, it's sprite.
Yeah. And actually, that's an interesting one, because we originally had 2 separate prefabs for the black player and the white player, and we merged those so that way we could have a lot more flexibility within a single player class. And that's how the hitbox system was really, really born, because we could now have one player, regardless of color. We didn't have to remake all the hitbox or anything, but this also gave us the ability to make the team colors change. So it doesn't have to be black versus white. It can be red versus blue, or green versus yellow, or whatever we really want it to be. So it gives players a bit more option and diversity of the game, just color-wise, so it's more visually appealing.
Yeah. So I guess some other things we're proud of are the timer and point system, just some simple UI things, but still adds a lot to the game. You know, telling the player when it actually ends, and
it definitely speeds up the game whenever you're watching a timer count down.
Because they can't hide anymore.
Exactly. And I'd say lastly is the main menu. The main menu really sets the stage for the game.
It went through a lot of iterations.
It went through a ton of iterations. But I mean, it makes the whole game have a feeling right as soon as you start. You know what you're getting into. It really helps simplify the process too, as far as what we wanted originally, that easy to pick up and play deal. It makes it so much simpler, because you don't jump in and wonder, what am I doing? You go straight to your controller selects, you understand what's happening. It gives you a good general feel for everything. Obviously there's credits in there, but there's also the level select, so you can easily pick where you want to go. And even with how many players you pick, it'll automatically adjust the level that you pick to be suited for those players. So if you have a 2 versus 1, the level will actually load that 2v1 because you had a team setup at the very beginning in the main menu. So it really simplified everything, and overall the game's pretty fun to play at this point.
Yep.
So
and that's ColorBrine. Thank you for listening.